all, Violet here, second generation homeschooling mom of 3. I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a toddler. Today I wanted to give you an update on how our second trimester went. So let's get into it. So overall, our second trimester went really well. It was very busy. It's a very busy time of year for us. And the time change a few weeks ago really threw us for a loop. It always does. We know it's coming and we still it completely upsets all of our routines and everything because our internal clocks are not the right time anymore. Anyway, I'm going to do my son's subjects first because he doesn't have a ton of them, and then I'll do my daughter's and family subjects. So for my son, he's working through Singapore primary mathematics. He's in kindergarten, but he's working in the first grade book. He did the kindergarten book last year in his pre-K year, and he flew through it. He just finds math very intuitive, and he's watched a ton of Number Blocks. He watches it over and over again, which if you haven't heard of Number Blocks, it's a math show from BBC that all of these little unit cubes essentially have different personalities, and it makes mental math very visual and easy for kids to understand, and it installs a really strong number sense. So I really like Number Blocks, and he got a lot out of it, to the point where I actually debated just maybe skipping first grade. But then when I was looking at the topics covered, yes, he can do all of the mental math that they introduce in first grade, addition, subtraction, but a lot of the other things that they talk about, like their methods for problem solving, like bar graphs and doing the column method for addition and subtraction, he doesn't have any exposure to any of that, and I did not want to overwhelm him by getting too far ahead. So we're moving through this program quickly, but hitting all of the things that he hasn't experienced before, so he doesn't have any gaps later on as we continue to move through Singapore. For Singapore, you can skip the kindergarten year. That year is totally optional, but if you skip any of the other years, then you start to have things that you may need to go back and reteach because they taught kind of the building blocks in a lower level. And I didn't really want that to happen to my son, so I figured we would just move through first grade as quickly as we needed to, and so far that's been going pretty well for him. Yeah, and then once he's done with that book, we'll just move right into the second grade book. Reading for him is going really, really well. He is almost done with reading reflex. We're working on the multisyllable word section at the back right now. I have a whole video going through this that I'll link below if you're interested in reading reflex more. We're pairing reading pathways with reading reflex, mostly because I already own it. It's the reading pathways is the companion book to phonics pathways, which is the reading program I used for my daughter. And it also has a bunch of multisyllable pyramids that we're going through as well. In addition to these two things, he's also reading to me. I let him choose whatever book he wants to read, and he'll read me a chapter from it. So he's been reading me a lot of Super Rabbit Boy books. Those are one of the Scholastic Branches series. He's been reading me chapters from Bad Guys. He's been reading me chapters from those Who Would Win books. So all kinds of stuff. His reading has really taken off during this second trimester, and that's just very exciting for me. I kind of love and hate teaching reading. I think it's really exciting once they get to the point where they can read independently and they just kind of really take off in terms of fluency and reading comprehension and really being able to explore reading on their own. But the process of getting there, I find, can be very tedious and painful sometimes, but it's so important to lay all those foundational building blocks that there just really isn't a way around it. For handwriting, he's been doing well as well. He still struggles sometimes with kind of the fine motor stuff. He did OT for a while. He finally graduated during the second trimester. And so he's not going to OT anymore, but he still does need a few accommodations for writing. Mostly he writes on a slant board. So the book is slanted, which forces him to engage the right muscles, because otherwise he tries to compensate to kind of make up for some of his weaker fine motor. But he's been doing really, really well. And then for him, he also does fish tank, ELA, and that's been going really well. We're doing the spring unit right now. That's lots of fun. And then the last subject that he does every day is French. So for him, I got this Whistle Fritz collection for French. We had it for Spanish and liked it. And my kids enjoy the TV show part of it. They aren't huge fans of the CDs. Just in general, my son is not a huge music person, and I don't know if that's related to his sensory processing stuff. I know there's all kinds of music that I don't like because I find them auditorily overwhelming. So I don't know if it's something like that or if he just doesn't care for these CDs. But in general, we like these DVDs as well. And there's a homeschool educator guide that you can download that kind of has you space out the episodes. It is very repetitive though, so I looked at it and then didn't really use it. But it is there if you don't want to schedule everything out yourself. But I kind of just let my son tell me when he was ready to watch those, and we watch them in 10-minute chunks. And then the other thing that he's doing is these French box sets. So these are readers that have audio. So he sits, he'll choose one. He's now listened to all of them a bunch of times, but he'll choose one. It'll read it to him. He'll flip. It's color coded. So whatever the thing is talking about, the words and then the thing are in the same color. These boxes are kind of expensive. If you buy them new, they're $25 each. But I've been hunting on eBay and I managed to get this one. I think I had to buy new, but these other two I got used, and you can see they're a little bit beat up, but just fine in terms of the books are still readable and everything. And he really likes these. He listens to at least one almost every day. He sometimes asks to listen to them even on non-school days, and he usually will listen to several. So I don't know where we're going to go for French next year, his first grade year, because I think I'm going to need to add on more if I want to continue building his fluency and like his conversation skills, because right now this is a lot of input and not necessarily a lot of him being forced to speak or express things in French. But I also am not fluent in French, and I haven't really found any elementary level French classes in our area. Yeah, so I don't know what I want to do next year, but for this year, this is going well for him. And that's it for my son's subjects. He occasionally will ask to do history. He's still finishing up some of the history hops from History Quest Middle Times, just because he was listening to them with my daughter, and then he stopped, and now he's kind of interested in them again. But that's really sporadic. It's just whenever he asks for it. And then for science, it's kind of just when he asks for it. I loosely follow Exploring Nature with Children, which is not 100% secular, but it's secular enough for us. We can just substitute poems or themes or whatever if we don't like them. So for Exploring Nature with Children, each week has a theme, like the moon or trees in winter or whatever. So we'll talk a little bit about the theme. If he wants to do something with it, we'll go look at trees or whatever. But most of the time he is like, oh, all right, cool, and then goes off and does his own thing. All right, and then for my daughter, she just finished this A book, which I don't have her B book out yet, but the A book is always significantly thicker than the B book. These are two different grades, but just to give you an idea. So I am not concerned that it took her 2 trimesters to do this A book, because she will be able to finish the B book in 1 trimester. That should be totally fine, because they usually are so much thinner and the concepts are easier. The reason why this A book is so thick is because it was all the like review lessons, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all of that, and then fractions, word problems, multiplying fractions, adding and subtracting, like all of those really difficult concepts that get introduced this year are in this book. And then the B book is kind of review of that, and then like time, money, geometry, stuff like that. Anyway, she did really well with fractions. I was impressed. I thought she was going to find them more confusing than she did. She grasped them pretty easily. Like, I think she found them more intuitive than I did when I was her age. Definitely. I remember being confused by fractions for a long time, but she did really well. She's in 3rd grade, so she also is a year ahead in math. She also did the Singapore kindergarten math in the preschool year, and then 1st grade in kindergarten, and basically the same thing that my son is doing. They're each a year ahead, and that's worked well for us so far. All right, so for grammar, she is doing first language lessons, level 3. We did level 1 and 2. We enjoyed it. For level 3, they introduced diagramming, and we're using Rooted in Language's grammar bugs to analyze the sentences instead of doing the strict diagramming. I do still show her the diagramming in the student book, just so that if she ever sees it somewhere, she understands what it's for. But when we are doing our analysis of the sentences in here, we use the Rooted in Language method that they have with their Grammar Bugs product. And then for writing, we're still doing Writing with Ease. This is the book. There's 2 different ways you can do this program. You can either buy the workbooks where everything is laid out for you, or you can buy this overview book that tells you what to look for in your selections for each week. I did a flip through this already that I'll link down below, so I'm not going to go through it all again. But this can be a 4-year program. The author, Susan Wise Bauer, recommends for most kids, they probably only need 3 years. And yeah, my daughter is totally over this program already. She's gotten everything she's going to get out of it, I feel like. And so we're definitely going to move to something else next year. Still trying to figure out what that is. But this is going well, although she is definitely tired of doing the dictation and the copywork, especially. The narration she's fine with, she loves. So for spelling, she's working her way through this. I don't know where the bookmark went. She's part of the way through this book. But we actually paused this book recently. She was starting to whine about it in a way that signals to me that she is bored with it. For my kids, at least, there's different kinds of whining. It all kind of sounds the same when you look at it on its face. I'm bored. This is hard. But depending upon how they're talking about it, sometimes it really does mean this is too hard. I need more scaffolding and support, or I need to take a step back. And sometimes what it means is this is boring and therefore I'm finding it difficult to do because I don't find it challenging at all and therefore it's not interesting. Her whining about spelling was kind of more that second kind, like I don't find this interesting anymore. So I was thinking that I was going to need to, I still want to keep using All About Spelling because I like it and because we're almost to the end and I don't want to switch programs and have gaps and like have to deal with all of that. But I think we do need to change how we use it. So I'm still brainstorming how we're going to change how we use it to make it a little bit more interesting for my daughter. But in the meantime, our town is having a spelling bee. And my daughter saw the flyers for that at the library and got really excited about the idea of a town spelling bee. So I signed her up for it. And so right now, instead of doing All About Spelling, she is actually studying for the spelling bee. And I did tell her when she signed up for it, I don't care how she does in the spelling bee, but if she signs up for it, I do want her to commit to studying for it and putting in her best effort. So as part of that, I was looking at the Scripps National Spelling Bee resources on their website. I saw that the Scripps National Spelling Bee has this list of books, and every year they publish a new list of books that are vocabulary rich and are interesting. They try to choose newer and more diverse selections. Like I was pretty impressed with the lists. I was looking back through the other years that they've published and I was pretty impressed. And then this list, a lot of the books on here we haven't read before, and you can see how many we've checked off already. We've really enjoyed them and I've been impressed with the selections. So this is partially spelling, but it's also her literature right now because she actually finished all of her Fish Tank grade 3 units, and I was thinking about what we should do next for literature. And then Grace Lynn, who is the author of Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and among a lot of other books. Actually, Fish Tank has a whole unit in kindergarten where they go through a bunch of her picture books in addition to other author illustrator picture books. Anyway, we've read a lot of her books. We've really enjoyed them, and she was coming to speak near us. And so we ended up doing, Fish Tank has a 4th grade unit for Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. So once she finished all the 3rd grade units, we did that 4th grade unit in preparation for going to see Grace Lynn speak. And she was a really good speaker. It was great. My daughter really appreciated having read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon before going to see her speak. So that was really cool. But then we finished all of that. And so then I was kind of at a crossroads, like, do we do some of the Fish Tank archived units from 3rd grade? They have a poetry unit that looks good that I want to do. Do we keep going with the Where the Mountain Meets the Moon trilogy? I would also like to do that. My daughter would like to do that too. But then my daughter signed up for this spelling bee and I found this literature list. So what we're doing for literature right now is going through these books. And then when we finish with this, we'll either go to poetry or more likely the rest of the Where the Mountain Meets the Moon books. Anyway, that was a lot to say. Essentially that my daughter is really excited about this spelling bee. And so we're using that for spelling and literature right now. Science is going really well. We actually, I don't have my schedule here, but we finished all of the science lessons I had planned for this year. Like we finished our whole year's worth of science already. We're going through this slightly faster than planned as well. We'd done 7 weeks of this last year too. So we already started with a big chunk that we'd already done. And we're just gonna keep going. If we finish this, I think the schedule we have is to do this book in 3 years. If we finish it before then, we'll either spend some time studying something specific that we're interested in, or we'll move on to the 3rd volume. Kind of, we'll decide that when we get there. But yeah, we're just gonna keep going with this. It's going well. We both enjoy it. For history, we are doing a combination of Story of the World and then also History Quest US. So we're using this for most of our lessons, but the chapters where it talks about US history, we use the History Quest ones instead because History Quest is a little bit more progressive and less whitewashed. And I like its perspective a little bit better. But we are really enjoying this. We use the audiobook mostly. I will say this year we haven't used the student guide a ton. I use it to look for some literature selections. And then my daughter doesn't like doing any of the activities. We've tried a few and she just thinks they're a waste of time. And I don't think they're super educationally important. Like if she wants to skip them, that's fine. I don't think she's really missing out on much. And then last year, she really liked the History Quest coloring pages, so I thought she was going to like the coloring pages with this, and she's been pretty meh about those. She asked if she could stop doing them. So she's just been doing various coloring books that she has and likes instead, and that is completely fine with me. And then for art, my daughter finished volume 5 of Artistic Pursuits, so we moved right into volume 6. Actually, when we opened this, so I bought this book used, but these DVDs had not been opened. And when I opened this DVD and put it into the DVD player, it was completely blank. There was nothing on it. So I emailed the company and I wasn't sure Sometimes like if you buy something used, you're kind of out of luck, like that's the risk you take. But they were great. They didn't ask me any questions. They just immediately sent me a new DVD. So I was impressed by that. I think their customer service is very good. I've always immediately gotten a response whenever I've asked a question, or this is the first time I've really had an issue. But yeah, they immediately mailed me a new DVD. So this is covering watercolor and impressionism. So a lot of the lessons are with watercolor. And I wasn't sure how this was going to go, just because when my daughter did the first introductory watercolor lessons in the introductory book when she was in first grade, she found watercolor a little bit frustrating to work with because it mixes all together when you're doing watercolor on a paper. But this has gone really well. She's actually really loved watercolor this time, and she hasn't had that issue. And part of it is that she's older now, and so she kind of knows what to expect from watercolor. And part of it is the instruction in this book. In the initial book, it's a lot more about, here's some watercolor, let's explore with it, do whatever you want, which that open-endedness is really nice. But in this book, it's a lot more like, today we are going to mix these two colors. Here's how you paint the watercolor so that they bleed into each other in this way. Or we don't want this painting to bleed. Here's how you're going to paint it in sections so that it doesn't bleed. And so the instruction is a little bit more explicit. And so my daughter has appreciated that. Most of the time, the really open-ended art prompts are not a problem for her, but with the watercolor specifically, she got frustrated that she couldn't match the vision in her head to what was happening on the paper because she just didn't have that much experience working with watercolor. Now that she's older and the instructions a little bit more explicit, this has been going really well, and she's been loving it. She's made some really, really cool paintings, which she did not want me to share with you, unfortunately. All right, and then for foreign language, my daughter does Mandarin Chinese. She goes to a heritage school once a week, and they teach her there, and she learns from native speakers, and it's great. To supplement during the week, I bought her these. My son really liked the ones for French, and she was interested in them too, and I saw these on eBay for like, I think $13 or $14 each, and so I grabbed them for her. And then the other thing that she was using as a supplement, and this is kind of one of the, finally getting to the things that we changed a little bit, she was using Duolingo and doing Mandarin on that, and she really liked it. Originally, she was just using regular Duolingo, but then they made some changes to Duolingo and introduced this thing where you had to get a certain number of answers correct in order to gain hearts and in order to be able to continue doing Duolingo. My daughter found that stressful, which I understand. I want this supplemental thing to be fun and just encouraging her to practice Chinese every day, not like this whole stressful, oh, I got to get everything right, or I'm not going to be able to hit my streak for the day or whatever. So I switched to an educational account, which you could set up for free. And at the time that I switched to the educational account for Duolingo, it had unlimited hearts for all the students that you added. Well, in December, they took that away from the educational accounts. So then we were right back where we'd started, where anytime she got something wrong, it would take some of her hearts away. And then she was in danger of not being able to complete the lesson and like having to redo it all when she logged back in. And that was just, she actually was just redoing old lessons instead of doing new lessons because she was so freaked out about getting something wrong and losing hearts. And it was just not good for her at all. It was not what I wanted from a supplemental thing, because her main instruction is coming from her Chinese school. I wanted whatever she did during the week to be instilling in her habit of practicing Chinese every day, but also being fun and low stress. Like that was the whole point, was that it was gamified and fun. And so adding the stress of the hearts just completely ruined it for her. So we stopped using Duolingo in December, and I looked at other apps. I didn't want to pay a ton for anything because we're already spending a lot on the Chinese school, and I bought these books, and like there's only so much money I have, and a lot of those apps and things, I felt like a lot of them were going to have a similar problem to Duolingo, where they were so gamified that then they were starting to penalize you for getting things wrong. So what we ended up doing was, our library has a subscription to Mango Languages, so you can access it through the library's website for free. So it's a lot less gamified than Duolingo. And so unfortunately, I think it's a little bit more boring for my daughter, but it's not stressful. Each chapter introduces whatever vocabulary you're learning with a conversation, and then you go through and learn all these different phrases that use the vocabulary, with a focus being on conversation. You're supposed to listen to what the native speaker is saying and then repeat it, and it has little like microphone modules where you can record yourself and compare a recording of yourself talking to a recording of a native speaker talking, and it has some really cool features like that. But it has you go over the same phrases over and over and over again in a lesson. Like you will do, it's cold in January or whatever, like 4 or 5 times in the same lesson, and it's overkill for my daughter. And then they have review flashcards. So for the phrases that you learn, they'll have you review it the next day. And then if you get it right, you'll review it in a few days. And then if you get it right again, you'll review it in a few weeks or whatever. Like it's spaced repetition. And then if you get it wrong, you'll review it more frequently. And then for typing, this is the other thing that we've changed. She was using typing.com and she did the initial learning to type course on typing.com. And when we originally signed up for typing.com, they had all of this additional stuff, extra practice beyond the learn how to type course that you could continue on to once you did that initial course. Well, while she was doing the learn to type course, they moved all that behind their paywall, which is totally fine, but I wasn't about to pay for all of those extra things. We just switched to typingclub.com, which is very similar, and they still have all of their additional practice courses for free, and they have a ton of them. So she's just been doing that instead of typing.com, but it's very similar. The reason why I originally went with typing.com instead of typingclub.com is because their introductory course was a little bit more succinct. Like it introduced things more quickly. And I just know from experience with teaching my kids, especially teaching them to learn to read and write, they really want to be introduced to everything as quickly as possible and then practice it a bunch. So I thought typing.com's introductory course that moved a little bit faster was going to be a better fit, but I don't think they're that different. All right, and then kind of segueing into our family subjects, the other thing that we have added during the second trimester is we have started watching BBC's News Round, which is a news show that's aimed at elementary students. Like it's not super in-depth and they try to keep it light and fun. So it's really good for the ages that my kids are at. So we've really enjoyed that. Both of my kids really, really like it. And actually my toddler really likes it too because she really likes animals. And so anytime they do one of the animal segments, she gets really excited. So we've added that to our morning routine. And then for other family subjects, for music, we've been doing folk songs and jazz. Folk songs have been going well. This jazz book has been going okay. My kids don't necessarily love it, but they don't dislike it either. It's just a bit more like heavily historical than the other music books in the series were. Those are a bit lighter just because I think they're written to slightly younger ages. But this is really good, and we've enjoyed reading about different artists and different styles of jazz and then listening to the music selections they have in here. Sometimes they have QR codes with links to music. Sometimes they just list kind of songs and albums and stuff. So this has been going well. And then our next family subject is social emotional learning. So we've been doing these card sets. We finished this one. We're working through this one. These basically just show you a scenario on the front and they ask you for this one, like, what does bear feel? Why is dog sad? Stuff like that. This one's more like, I don't know if you can read these little questions here, but it's what's going on here? Why is the cat crying? What happened here? Kind of thing. So these are fun. I did these with my daughter when she was in kindergarten. And so now we're doing them all together as a family, kind of more aimed at my son because it's his kindergarten year as well. So after we finish this, I'm gonna pick something probably that's more geared towards my daughter, but it's just taking me a little bit longer than anticipated to get through this and then the science readings as well. And that's partially because we have so many like OT and speech and co-op and things that we're doing that kind of interfere with our schedule. And so I haven't been getting to these family subject readings as often this year as I did last year, which is fine. These are more just enrichment things that I don't have necessarily like very strong goal of finishing certain things. And I'm okay with being a little bit more fluid. And if we only do them once or twice a week, that's fine. So we finished Pagoo finally. My daughter was very ambivalent about this book. She complained a lot at the beginning, but by the time we finished, she was interested in learning what happened to Pagoo. So I started off by reading just a single page each time, and then we did work up to reading the full chapter. There's like 20 or 21 chapters in here. So by the end of the book, we were reading, there's 20 chapters. We were reading the whole chapter at each sitting. So this was really good. This isn't a book that I would necessarily give my kids with the ages that they're at right now to read on their own, just because there are a few racist references. It's not a ton, and they're very easy to edit out while we're reading aloud or stop and discuss. But they're the sorts of things that, because my kids are still early elementary and they're still kind of developing their sense of the world, this isn't a book that I would hand them to go and read by themselves. It's definitely something that we read together and discuss. And I think that's just a little bit better for their ages. And then we read these every spring. And we started a little bit early this year, but we read Shanlia's Quest and Shanlia's Quest 2. I have a whole video about these books. I really, really like them, but just quickly, these are plant identification books, basically, that teach you the main characteristics of different families of plants. So there's 1 and 2. And then we haven't started yet, but our next book on the kind of our science reading is Varun's Quest. And this is kind of all about being curious and learning to observe the natural world closely. And it goes through some like life cycles and things like that. But it's kind of meant to be more of an introduction to scientific observation and curiosity. So I'm excited to start this one soon. And yeah, that's everything I have. Overall, our second trimester went really well. I hope yours did too. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Please let me know if you have any questions about anything that I talked about, or if you would like a more detailed look at anything that I showed. I have videos on a lot of these curricula. I'll try to link them all in the description box. But if there's something that you want more information about, or you have a question about anything, please let me know. I will also post links to all of the actual things I showed in the description box. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you click on an Amazon link and make a purchase, I do receive a small commission. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching.